The first rays of dawn broke over Riverside, California, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. But Marcus Reaper Thompson wasn't admiring the sunrise. He was staring at his 2018 Harley-Davidson Street Glide, his hands curled into fists so tight his knuckles had gone white. Someone had spray-painted 2 words across the chrome and metal he'd spent 3 years customizing. Thank you. What the hell? Marcus breathed, circling the bike slowly. The letters were crude, done in silver spray paint that caught the morning light. They covered his gas tank, stretched across the leather seat, decorated the saddlebags he'd imported from Germany. He wasn't alone. Up and down the street outside the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse, 15 motorcycles sat violated. Every single one bore the same message, spray-painted in that same silver color. Thank you. The clubhouse door slammed open. Victor Chains Rodriguez stormed out, his face twisted with rage. At 6 feet 3 inches and 240 pounds of muscle and tattoos, Chains was the kind of man who made grown men cross the street. The veins in his neck stood out like cables. My bike, he growled. Some punk tagged my damn bike. Within minutes, the entire Iron Brotherhood had assembled in the parking lot. 42 members strong, they represented one of the most respected motorcycle clubs in Southern California. These weren't weekend warriors playing dress-up. These were men who'd built their brotherhood through blood, sweat, and the kind of loyalty that went bone deep. Jackson, Preacher, Williams ran his weathered hand over the spray paint on his 1975 Shovelhead, the bike he'd owned for 30 years. At 63, Preacher was the club's president, a Vietnam veteran with gray hair pulled back in a long ponytail and eyes that had seen too much death to be easily rattled. But he was rattled now. Whoever did this, Chain snarled. They're gonna learn what happens when you disrespect the Iron Brotherhood. Check the cameras, Preacher said quietly, but his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The clubhouse security footage told the story. At 3:47 a.m., a figure in a dark hoodie had approached the bikes. Small, slight, moving with the nervous energy of someone who knew they were doing something dangerous. The footage was grainy, but they could make out spray paint cans in the figure's hands as they worked their way down the line, methodically painting those 2 words on every motorcycle. That's a kid, said Tommy Wrench Martinez, the club's sergeant-at-arms. Look at the size. Can't be more than 16, 17. Don't care if he's 12, Chain snapped. He vandalized our property. In our territory. That's a statement. Marcus leaned closer to the screen. There was something odd about the way the kid worked. No gang tags, no territorial markings, no obscenities. Just those 2 words, repeated over and over. Thank you. Why would some punk thank us for vandalizing our bikes? Marcus wondered aloud. Maybe it's sarcasm, suggested Rico Smoke Delgado, the youngest member at 24. Kids these days think they're clever. Preacher shook his head slowly. No, look at the way he's painting. He's not rushing. He's being careful, almost reverent. The word hung in the air like smoke. Reverent, Chains repeated, his tone making it clear what he thought of that theory. Boss, with respect, I don't care if the kid was saying prayers. He destroyed 42 bikes. That's not just disrespect to us. That's disrespect to everything we stand for. He was right about one thing. In motorcycle culture, your bike wasn't just transportation. It was an extension of your identity, a statement of freedom, a symbol of the road you'd traveled and the miles you'd earned. To vandalize someone's bike was to spit on everything they valued. We find this kid, Preacher declared. But we do it smart. Wrench, pull the footage. Give me a clear shot of his face. Smoke, check with our contacts. See if anyone knows about a kid tagging bikes in the area. Marcus, you and Chains canvassed the neighborhood. Someone saw something. As the meeting broke up, Marcus found himself staring at those words again. Thank you. Something didn't add up. The vandalism was extensive, deliberate, and must have taken at least an hour to complete. But the message itself, it wasn't hostile. It wasn't territorial. It was gratitude. What kind of kid risks his life to spray paint thank you on the motorcycles of a gang that could crush him without breaking a sweat? Marcus had a feeling that when they found this kid, the answer was going to surprise everyone. Part 2. The teenager. Dylan Christopher Martinez was 17 years old, and he hadn't slept in 36 hours. He sat in his bedroom, a cramped space in a rundown apartment complex on the east side of Riverside, his hands still stained with silver spray paint. His fingers trembled as he scrolled through the local news on his cracked phone screen, waiting for the story to break. When it did, his stomach dropped. Local motorcycle club vandalized, the headline read. Iron Brotherhood vows to find perpetrator. Dylan closed his eyes, his heart hammering against his ribs. He'd known this would happen. Of course they'd be angry. Of course they'd come looking for him. But he'd had to do it anyway. Because of Emma. In the next room, separated by a thin wall that did nothing to muffle sound, Dylan could hear his 12-year-old sister coughing. It was the wet, rattling cough that had become the soundtrack of their lives for the past 8 months. The cough that meant her lungs were filling with fluid again, that her rare autoimmune disease was winning another battle in a war she'd been fighting since she was 9. Dylan pushed himself up from his bed and walked to Emma's room. She was tiny for her age, her body ravaged by illness and treatments that were supposed to help but seemed to make everything worse. An oxygen tank sat beside her bed, its steady hiss a constant reminder of how fragile she was. "Hey, Em," Dylan said softly, settling into the chair beside her bed. Emma's eyes opened. Despite everything, despite the disease eating away at her body, those eyes still sparkled with the spirit of the girl she used to be. The one who'd wanted to be a dancer, who'd taught herself to skateboard, who'd never met a stranger. "You okay?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Dylan almost laughed. Here she was, barely able to breathe, and she was asking if he was okay. "I'm fine. You need anything? Water? Your medicine?" Emma shook her head slightly. "Just sit with me." Dylan took her hand, careful of the 4 poured in her wrist. Her skin felt paper-thin, like she might crumble at any moment. 3 years ago, their parents had died in a car accident on Interstate 10. A drunk driver, a moment of impact, and Dylan and Emma had become orphans. Their only living relative was their grandmother, Maria Martinez, and she worked 3 jobs just to keep them fed and housed. When Emma got sick, when the diagnoses came back with words like progressive and terminal and experimental treatments, the medical bills had started piling up like snow in an avalanche. Their grandmother's insurance was garbage, the kind that covered almost nothing and denied almost everything. They'd tried fundraisers, GoFundMe campaigns, church donations. They'd raised maybe $10,000. Emma's treatment cost $40,000 per round, and she needed rounds every 6 weeks to stay alive. Dylan had watched his grandmother age 10 years in the span of months. He'd watched her cry when she thought he couldn't hear, watched her make calls to collection agencies, begging for more time. He'd watched Emma get sicker while they scrambled for money that never seemed to materialize fast enough. And then, 3 months ago, something had happened that changed everything. Dylan had been walking home from his job at the grocery store, cutting through an alley he probably shouldn't have been in. He'd heard the commotion before he'd seen it. Shouts, the sound of fists hitting flesh, someone begging for mercy. He'd peered around the corner and seen 3 men beating a 4th. The victim was on the ground, curled into a ball, while his attackers kicked him systematically. Dylan had frozen, his phone in his hand, trying to decide if calling 911 would make things worse. Then he'd seen the leather vest on the victim's back. The patches, the insignia. Iron Brotherhood. One of the attackers had pulled out a knife. Dylan hadn't thought. He'd just acted. He'd grabbed a metal trash can lid and charged into the alley, screaming at the top of his lungs. The noise and surprise had been enough. The attackers had scattered, disappearing into the night like roaches when the lights came on. Dylan had helped the biker to his feet. The man had been bleeding from his nose and mouth, his left eye already swelling shut. But he'd looked at Dylan with something like respect. "You're either really brave or really stupid, kid," the biker had said. His voice had been rough, like gravel in a blender. "Probably stupid," Dylan had admitted. The biker had laughed, then winced. "What's your name?" "Dylan. Dylan Martinez." "I'm Rico. Rico Delgado. But everyone calls me Smoke." He'd extended a bloodied hand, and Dylan had shaken it. "You just saved my life, Dylan Martinez. Those guys gonna come back. Not if they're smart." Smoke had pulled out his phone, made a quick call. Within minutes, 2 more bikers had arrived. They'd looked at Dylan with curiosity, maybe a hint of suspicion, but also gratitude. "This the kid?" one of them had asked. "Yeah, kid's got heart." They'd insisted on taking Dylan home, making sure he got there safely. Before they'd left, Smoke had given Dylan his number. "You ever need anything at all, you call me. Iron Brotherhood doesn't forget its debts." Dylan had nodded, not really believing it. Rich bikers with expensive motorcycles didn't help poor kids from the east side. That's not how the world worked. But 2 weeks later, when Emma had been rushed to the hospital with a collapsed lung, when the bills had started coming in and their grandmother had been on the phone crying with the hospital's billing department, Dylan had remembered that number. He'd called it. Smoke had answered on the second ring. Dylan had explained the situation, his voice breaking as he described Emma's condition, the bills, the desperation. He'd half expected Smoke to make an excuse, to say there was nothing he could do. Instead, Smoke had said, "Give me the hospital name and your grandmother's information." 3 days later, a check had arrived. $20,000, made out to the hospital for Emma's treatment. No note, no explanation, just the money they desperately needed. Dylan had called Smoke back, stammering his thanks. "Don't thank me," Smoke had said. "Thank the Brotherhood. We take care of our own, and anyone who saves one of us is family." That money had bought Emma 6 more weeks of life. 6 more weeks of her laugh, her spirit, her presence. But then those weeks had run out, and they'd needed another round of treatment. Dylan had swallowed his pride and called Smoke again. Another check had arrived. $40,000 this time, enough for the full treatment. When Emma's condition had worsened and they'd needed experimental medication that cost $60,000, the Iron Brotherhood had come through again. The bikers never asked for anything in return, never demanded favors, never held the debt over Dylan's head. They'd just helped, because that's what family did. Over the past 3 months, the Iron Brotherhood had paid for nearly $150,000 in Emma's medical care. They'd saved her life over and over again, and Dylan had no way to repay them. You can't repay someone saving your sister's life with words. You can't shake their hand and call it even. The debt was infinite, impossible, crushing. So Dylan had done the only thing he could think of. He'd spray-painted "thank you" on every bike he could find, knowing they'd be furious, knowing they'd come after him, but needing them to understand that he knew what they'd done, that he appreciated it, that their kindness hadn't gone unnoticed in a world that was mostly cruel. It was stupid. It was vandalism. It would probably land him in jail. But Emma was alive. And sometimes, that was all that mattered. Part 3. The Investigation. The Iron Brotherhood didn't need long to find Dylan. In a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, where the bikers had contacts in every corner store and gas station, tracking down one skinny teenager with spray paint on his hands was child's play. It took them less than 18 hours. Marcus and Chains pulled up to the Martinez apartment complex in Marcus's truck, deliberately not riding their bikes. This wasn't about intimidation. Not yet, anyway. This was about understanding. The complex was the kind of place where dreams went to die slowly. Peeling paint, cracked sidewalks, windows covered with bars that were supposed to keep people safe, but mostly just made them feel like prisoners. A group of kids played basketball on a court with a bent rim and no net. An old woman watered plants that refused to grow in the desert heat. 3rd floor, apartment 3D. Chains read from his phone. Kid lives with his grandmother and sick sister. Marcus frowned. Sick sister? That's what Smoke said. Some kind of disease. Real bad. They climbed the stairs, each step creaking under their weight. The hallway smelled like fried food and disappointment. They found 3D and knocked. The door opened to reveal an elderly Latino woman, maybe 65, with tired eyes and hands that shook slightly as she gripped the doorframe. Maria Martinez looked at these 2 large, tattooed men and her face went pale. "Can I help you?" she asked, her accent thick but her English clear. "We're looking for Dylan Martinez," Marcus said, keeping his voice gentle. "We need to talk to him about something that happened last night." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "He's a good boy. Whatever he did, please, he's a good boy." "Ma'am, we're not the police," Chains said. "We just want to talk." "Grandma." A voice came from inside the apartment. Dylan appeared behind his grandmother, and when he saw who was at the door, all the color drained from his face. "It's okay, Grandma," Dylan said quietly. "I know why they're here." He stepped past his grandmother onto the landing, closing the door behind him. Up close, he looked even younger than in the security footage. Skinny, with dark circles under his eyes and silver paint still visible on his fingernails. "You're from the Iron Brotherhood," Dylan said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," Marcus confirmed. "You know why we're here?" Dylan nodded. "The bikes. I spray-painted them." Chains stepped forward, and Dylan flinched but held his ground. You got any idea how much damage you did, kid? Those bikes are worth more than this entire building. I know, Dylan whispered. I'm sorry. I'll pay for it. I'll get a job, work extra hours, whatever it takes. Kid, you couldn't afford to fix one bike, let alone 42, Chains said, not unkindly. But that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking why. Why did you tag our bikes? Why did you write thank you? Dylan looked at these two men, these giants who could break him in half without effort, and something in him cracked. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the weight of everything he'd been carrying. Maybe it was just that he had nothing left to lose. Because you saved my sister's life, Dylan said, his voice breaking. You saved her, and I had no way to thank you. And I just wanted you to know that I know what you did, that it mattered, that she matters. Marcus and Chains exchanged a look. What are you talking about? Marcus asked. So Dylan told them. About the alley, about Smoke, about Emma's illness. About the medical bills that had buried his family. About his grandmother working herself to death. About watching his sister fade a little more each day. Smoke gave us his number, Dylan explained. Said to call if we ever needed anything. So when Emma got bad, I called. And you guys, you helped. You kept helping. $150,000. You paid for her treatments. You never asked for anything back. You saved her. Marcus's expression had gone very still. Kid, how do you know it was the Brotherhood who paid those bills? Dylan pulled out his phone, showed them the check stubs his grandmother had kept. Each one bore the signature of Smoke Delgado, with a memo line that read, Iron Brotherhood Community Fund. Chains took the phone, studied the checks, then handed it to Marcus. I didn't know another way to say thank you, Dylan continued, tears now streaming down his face. I know it was stupid. I know you're probably going to press charges or beat me up or whatever, but I needed you to know that what you did, it mattered. Emma's still alive because of you. She's breathing, she's fighting, she's here. And I'll never, ever be able to repay that. Marcus looked at this kid, this skinny teenager who'd risked everything just to spray paint gratitude onto 42 motorcycles, and felt something shift in his chest. Where's Smoke? He asked Chains. Chains was already pulling out his phone. I'll call him. 20 minutes later, Rico Smoke Delgado pulled up on his newly spray-painted motorcycle. He took one look at Dylan's tear-stained face and understood everything. Hey kid, Smoke said gently. I'm sorry, Dylan sobbed. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to say thank you. Smoke pulled Dylan into a hug, this scared kid who'd saved his life, and held him while he cried. You already thanked me, Smoke said. You saved my life in that alley. Everything after that. That wasn't charity, kid. That was paying back a debt. But I can't fix your bikes, Dylan said. I can't afford it. I'll go to jail. Marcus stepped forward. Dylan, look at me. The kid looked up, his eyes red and swollen. You're not going to jail? Marcus said. And you're not paying for anything. But I vandalized your property. All those bikes. Yeah, you did, Marcus agreed. And you know what? They're just bikes. They can be cleaned, repainted, fixed. But what you did, what you were trying to say. He trailed off, searching for words. Kid, that took more courage than most grown men have. Chains nodded. Takes guts to stand up to a motorcycle club. Takes even more guts to spray paint thank you on their bikes and wait for them to find you. I don't understand, Dylan said. You're not mad. Oh, we were mad, Smoke assured him. When we first saw those bikes, we were ready to tear this city apart. But now that we know why. He smiled. How's Emma doing? Dylan's face brightened slightly. She's having a good day today. The last treatment helped. Doctor says if we can keep her stable for 6 more months, there's an experimental trial she might qualify for. Could cure her completely. 6 more months of treatment, Marcus calculated. That's what, $200,000. Dylan's shoulders slumped. We'll figure it out. We always do. Grandma's looking at taking a 4th job, and I can drop out of school, work full-time. No, Smoke interrupted. You're not dropping out of school, and your grandma's not taking a 4th job. But Emma needs. Emma's got the Iron Brotherhood, Marcus said firmly. And so do you. Whatever it costs, we'll handle it. Dylan stared at them, unable to comprehend this level of generosity. Why? Why would you do that? Preacher's voice came from behind them. The club president had arrived with half a dozen other members, all of them looking at Dylan with expressions the kid couldn't quite read. Because that's what family does, Preacher said simply. And your family now, Dylan. You saved one of ours. We take care of our own. But the bikes, Dylan protested weakly. I ruined them. Preacher walked over to Smoke's motorcycle, ran his hand over the silver spray paint. You know what? I think we should leave them like this. The other bikers murmured in agreement. Every time we ride, we'll remember why we do what we do, Preacher continued. We'll remember that kindness matters. That helping people matters. That sometimes a scared kid with a spray can knows more about gratitude than most people learn in a lifetime. Dylan couldn't hold it together anymore. He broke down completely. This 17-year-old kid who'd been trying to be strong for so long, who'd been carrying impossible weight on shoulders too young to bear it. And the Iron Brotherhood, these tough, scary bikers that society labeled as criminals and outcasts, surrounded him and held him up. Part 4. The Revelation. 2 weeks after the spray paint incident, Emma Martinez was rushed to the emergency room. Dylan called Smoke at 2 a.m., his voice cracking with panic. She can't breathe. We're at Riverside Community Hospital. They're saying her lungs are filling with fluid and the regular treatment isn't working. They want to try something experimental, but it's not covered by insurance and it costs. We're coming, Smoke interrupted. Don't you worry about the money. Just be with your sister. Within an hour, 8 Iron Brotherhood members had assembled in the hospital parking lot. They'd ridden through the night, their bikes still bearing Dylan's spray-painted thank yous like badges of honor. Inside, the scene was chaotic. Emma was in the ICU, hooked up to machines that beeped and hissed and monitored every failing system in her small body. Maria sat beside her granddaughter's bed, holding her hand and praying in Spanish. Dylan paced the hallway, his eyes wild with fear. When he saw the bikers, he nearly collapsed with relief. The doctor says it's $80,000 for the emergency treatment, Dylan said. And even that might not work. She might need a lung transplant, and that's hundreds of thousands more, and… Dylan, Marcus said, gripping the kid's shoulders. Breathe. Where's the doctor? They found Dr. Sarah Chun in her office, a petite Asian woman in her 40s with kind eyes and the exhausted expression of someone who'd been fighting impossible battles for too long. When 8 large bikers crowded into her small office, she didn't even blink. Let me guess, she said. You're here about Emma Martinez. We're here to pay for whatever she needs, Preacher said. All of it. Dr. Chin studied them. Do you have any idea how much this could cost? We're talking about experimental treatments, possible transplant surgery, months of post-operative care. We could be looking at $500,000 or more. We'll handle it, Preacher said simply. I need to understand something, Dr. Chen said, leaning back in her chair. Why? Most families can't afford this kind of care. Why is a motorcycle club willing to drop $500,000 on one sick kid? The bikers exchanged glances. Finally, Smoke spoke. Because that kid's brother saved my life. Because he stood up when nobody else would. Because family takes care of family, and that's what they are now. Dr. Chin's eyes misted. You know, in 20 years of medicine, I've seen a lot of things. But I've never seen anything like this. She pulled out a file. Okay, let me tell you what Emma needs. What Emma needed was a miracle, wrapped in cutting-edge medicine and delivered with a healthy dose of hope. The experimental treatment Dr. Chin proposed was called CAR T-cell therapy, a revolutionary approach that had shown promise in treating Emma's specific autoimmune condition. The process involved extracting Emma's own T-cells, genetically modifying them to attack the disease, and then reintroducing them to her body. It was expensive, risky, and Emma's only real chance. The thing is, Dr. Chin continued, even if you can afford it, we need FDA approval for compassionate use. That requires paperwork, board reviews, insurance negotiations. It could take weeks, maybe months. Emma doesn't have months, Dylan said from the doorway. He'd been listening, his face pale. I know, Dr. Chin said softly. Preacher pulled out his phone. What if we could speed up the process? Would you be willing to start treatment immediately if all the approvals came through? Of course, but just answer the question, doctor. If we handle the bureaucracy, can you save this girl? Dr. Chin looked at Emma's file, then at the determined faces of these unlikely saviors. Yes, I believe I can. Then consider it handled. What happened next would become legend in Riverside. The Iron Brotherhood didn't just throw money at the problem. They mobilized like a military operation. Members with legal backgrounds started filing paperwork. Members with political connections started making calls. Members with media savvy started telling Emma's story to every news outlet that would listen. Within 48 hours, Emma Martinez's face was on every local news station. 12-year-old girl needs experimental treatment to survive, the headlines read. Motorcycle club raises money for miracle cure. The story caught fire on social media. Hashtag #SaveEmma started trending. Donations poured in from across the country. The GoFundMe the Brotherhood set up raised $200,000 in the first week. But it wasn't just about money. The Iron Brotherhood had something more valuable: connections. Chains, it turned out, had served in the Marines with a guy who now worked for the FDA. That guy owed Chains his life from a firefight in Fallujah. One phone call, and the compassionate use approval process mysteriously accelerated. Marcus had a cousin who was a hospital administrator at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, one of the best medical facilities in the country. When Marcus explained the situation, his cousin pulled strings to get Emma transferred and accepted into their experimental program. Wrench knew a guy who owned a medical transport company. That guy had lost his daughter to cancer 5 years ago and still carried the grief like an open wound. When he heard about Emma, he offered to transport her to Los Angeles for free, with full medical support. Smoke reached out to his extensive network in the motorcycle community. Word spread from chapter to chapter, club to club. Hells Angels, Outlaws, Bandidos, groups that normally wouldn't give each other the time of day, all contributed to Emma's fund. Because some things transcended rivalry. Some things mattered more than patches and territory. Within 2 weeks, everything was in place. The approvals were signed. The doctors were ready. The treatment facility was prepared. And the Iron Brotherhood had raised over $400,000. Emma Martinez was going to get her miracle. Part 5. The Unexpected Turn. The night before Emma's transfer to Los Angeles, something happened that would change everything. Dylan was alone in the hospital cafeteria, nursing a cold cup of coffee and trying not to think about all the ways the treatment could fail, when a man in an expensive suit approached his table. "Dylan Martinez?" the man asked. "Yeah." The man pulled out a badge. "I'm Special Agent Thomas Brennan, FBI. I need to talk to you about the Iron Brotherhood." Dylan's blood ran cold. "What about them?" Agent Brennan sat down uninvited. "We've been investigating the Iron Brotherhood for the past 18 months. Drug trafficking, weapons smuggling, money laundering. We're building a RICO case that could put the entire leadership away for 20 years. "That's not true," Dylan said. "They're good people. They saved my sister." "With money from illegal activities," Brennan said. "Do you have any idea where that $400,000 came from?" "Because I do. And trust me, it didn't come from legal sources." Dylan's world tilted. "What are you talking about?" Brennan pulled out a folder, spread photographs across the table. Pictures of bikers meeting with known drug dealers. Surveillance photos of money exchanges. Financial records that showed suspicious transactions. "The Iron Brotherhood runs one of the largest methamphetamine distribution networks in Southern California," Brennan said. "They launder money through legitimate businesses, pay off cops, intimidate witnesses. They're a criminal organization, Dylan. And that money they gave you? It's dirty." Dylan stared at the photos, his mind racing. "Even if that's true, they still saved Emma. They still helped us when nobody else would. I understand that. And I'm not unsympathetic. But I need your help." Brennan leaned forward. "We need someone on the inside. Someone they trust. Someone who can wear a wire, gather evidence, help us build our case. You want me to betray them. I want you to help us take down a criminal enterprise. In exchange, we can offer you and your family witness protection, relocation assistance, and a guaranteed spot for Emma in any medical facility in the country, fully funded by the federal government." Dylan felt sick. "They're my family. They're criminals who bought your loyalty. They saved my sister's life. With drug money," Brennan shot back. "Money that came from destroying other families, other communities. How many other kids like Emma are out there, dying because their parents are addicted to the meth the Iron Brotherhood sells?" The words hit Dylan like a physical blow. He'd been so focused on Emma, on his own desperation, that he'd never stopped to think about where the money was coming from. "I need an answer, Dylan. Tomorrow, Emma gets transferred to Los Angeles. The Brotherhood will be vulnerable, exposed. This is our window. Help us bring them down, or watch them eventually destroy more lives." Dylan looked at Agent Brennan, then down at the photos spread across the table. Men he'd come to think of as family, engaged in activities that would horrify him if he let himself think about it. "I need time," Dylan whispered. "You have until tomorrow morning," Brennan said. "After that, We move with or without you. And Dylan? If you warn them, you become an accessory. Choose wisely. Agent Brennan left Dylan sitting alone in the cafeteria, the weight of an impossible choice crushing down on him. That night, Dylan couldn't sleep. He paced his grandmother's apartment, his mind a war zone of conflicting loyalties. On one hand, the Iron Brotherhood had saved Emma. They'd shown up when nobody else would. They'd treated him like family, protected him, supported him. They'd given him hope when the world had offered nothing but despair. On the other hand, if what Agent Brennan said was true, that hope was built on the suffering of others. The money that paid for Emma's treatment had come from selling poison to desperate people. The kindness they'd shown him was funded by destroying other families. How could he reconcile those two truths? At 3 a.m., Dylan made a decision. He called Smoke. Kid, it's the middle of the night. Everything okay? I need to talk to you. To all of you. It's important. Emma's okay though, right? Emma's fine. This is about something else. Can you get everyone together? An hour later, Dylan stood in the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse, facing 42 men who'd become his family. The same men whose bikes still bore his spray-painted thank yous. The same men who'd raised nearly $500,000 to save his sister. Preacher sat in his president's chair, studying Dylan with those knowing eyes. What's this about, kid? Dylan took a deep breath. An FBI agent approached me today. He told me you're under investigation for drug trafficking and money laundering. He showed me photos, financial records. He asked me to wear a wire and help them build a case against you. The room went deathly silent. Chains rose slowly, his massive frame tense. Did you agree? No. I told him I needed time to think. And what have you decided? Preacher asked quietly. Dylan looked at each face in turn. Men who'd shown him nothing but kindness. Men who'd saved his sister. Men who, if the FBI was right, had also destroyed countless other lives. I need to know the truth, Dylan said. Are you drug dealers? Is that money you gave us from selling meth? Preacher was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded to Wrench, who pulled out a laptop and brought up a series of financial documents. Yeah, kid, Preacher said. We deal drugs. Meth mostly, some cocaine. We launder money through legitimate businesses. We do exactly what that FBI agent said we do. Dylan felt his knees go weak. Part of him had hoped it was a lie, a misunderstanding. But, Preacher continued, that's not the whole truth. Part 6, the Brotherhood responds. Wrench turned the laptop toward Dylan. These are the Iron Brotherhood's financial records for the past 5 years. Not the ones we show the IRS. The real ones. Dylan stared at spreadsheets, columns of numbers that made his head spin. We do run drugs, Preacher said. But not the way the FBI thinks. Yeah, we move product. Yeah, we handle distribution. But we don't sell to kids. We don't sell in schools or neighborhoods with children. We don't cut our product with poison. And every single dollar we make goes right back into the community. Marcus stepped forward. 6 years ago, my daughter died of a heroin overdose. She was 16. Bought it from some scumbag who cut it with fentanyl. She took one hit and never woke up. His voice broke. That's when I joined the Brotherhood. Not to deal drugs, but to control the trade. Because someone's gonna sell in this city, kid. Someone's always gonna sell. The question is, do you want it controlled by cartels who don't give a damn who they hurt? Or by people who at least try to minimize the damage? Dylan shook his head. That's not how this works. You can't justify selling drugs just because other people would do it worse. You're right, Preacher agreed. We can't. But let me show you something. He pulled out another folder. This is a breakdown of what we do with the money. 50% goes to medical bills for people who can't afford treatment. People like Emma. We've paid for cancer treatments, surgeries, experimental therapies. We've saved over 200 lives in 5 years. Another document. 20% goes to a scholarship fund for kids whose parents are addicts. We've put 37 kids through college. Another. 15% goes to homeless shelters and addiction treatment centers. Real treatment, not the government bullshit that doesn't work. 10% goes to legal defense for people wrongly accused or over-sentenced for nonviolent crimes. And the last 5%? That covers our operating costs, keeps the club running. Dylan stared at the numbers. They were astronomical. Millions of dollars, all accounted for, all going to help people. We're not the good guys, Preacher said. We know that. We deal drugs, we break laws, we operate outside the system. But we do it because the system is broken. Because people like Emma fall through the cracks every single day, and nobody gives a damn. Smoke walked over. You remember that night in the alley? Those guys who were beating me up? They were cartel enforcers. They wanted us to start selling to kids, cutting our product with dangerous chemicals, expanding into family neighborhoods. We said no. So they came after us. That's why you were alone, Dylan realized. Yeah, I'd gone to meet them, try to negotiate. They weren't interested in negotiating. Smoke smiled grimly. Lucky for me, a brave kid with a trash can lid showed up. Dylan's mind was reeling. But you're still breaking the law. You're still hurting people. Are we? Shane's challenged. The people who buy from us, they're gonna buy from someone. At least with us, they know they're getting clean product. They know the dosage. We give them information on treatment centers. We don't judge them. Some of them even get clean because we help them. Wrench pulled up more documents. These are the crime statistics for our territory over the past 5 years. Drug-related deaths? Down 60%. Property crimes? Down 40%. Gang violence? Down 70%. Why? Because when you control the trade, you can control the chaos. You can set rules. You can protect people. The FBI doesn't care about any of that, Preacher said. To them, we're just criminals who need to be locked up. They'll shut us down, pat themselves on the back for getting drugs off the street, and then the cartels will move in and everything will get worse. More deaths, more violence, more families destroyed. He looked at Dylan steadily. So yeah, what we do is illegal. But is it wrong? That's for you to decide. Dylan sat down heavily on a nearby couch. His entire worldview was being dismantled and rebuilt in real time. What do you want from me? He asked quietly. The truth is, Preacher said, we've known about the FBI investigation for months. We have cops on the payroll, lawyers who keep us informed. We knew they'd eventually try to flip someone. We just didn't expect it to be you. Are you going to kill me? Dylan asked, surprised by how calm he sounded. Chains laughed, but it wasn't a cruel sound. Kid, we're not the mob. We don't kill people for talking to the feds. But we do need to know where you stand, Preacher said. Are you with us, or against us? Dylan thought about Emma, sleeping in a hospital bed, about to get treatment that could save her life. Treatment paid for with drug money. Treatment that wouldn't exist without the Iron Brotherhood's illegal activities. He thought about all the other Emmas out there, the ones who didn't have a Dylan to fight for them, who didn't have a chance encounter with a biker in an alley. He thought about the system that had failed his family, that failed thousands of families every single day. And he thought about Agent Brennan's question. How many other kids were dying because their parents were addicted to the meth the Iron Brotherhood sold? I don't know, Dylan admitted. I don't know what the right answer is. Preacher nodded. That's honest. And honestly, neither do we. We make choices every day that we're not sure about. We try to do more good than harm, but it's a razor's edge. He stood up. Here's what I'm offering. Don't wear the wire. Don't help the FBI. Give us time to move our operation, protect our people. In exchange, we'll still pay for Emma's treatment. We'll still take care of your family. And when she's better, if you decide you can't live with what we do, we'll let you walk away. No hard feelings, no retaliation. And if I say no? Dylan asked. If I help the FBI? Then we go to prison, Preacher said simply. The Brotherhood falls apart. The cartels move in. The community suffers. And yeah, Emma still gets her treatment, because we're not monsters. We honor our debts. But you'll have to live with the consequences of that choice for the rest of your life. Dylan looked around the room at these men, these complicated, contradictory men who were both criminals and saviors. I need to think, he said. You've got until morning, Preacher said. Same deadline the FBI gave you. Funny how that works out. As Dylan left the clubhouse, Smoke walked him to his car. Whatever you decide, Smoke said. I meant what I said that first night. You saved my life. That debt doesn't expire, even if you send us to prison. Dylan drove home through empty streets, the weight of the world on his 17-year-old shoulders. Part 7. The Patch-Burning Decision. Dylan didn't sleep that night. He sat in Emma's hospital room, watching her breathe with the help of machines, and tried to figure out what the right thing to do was. At 6 a.m., his grandmother found him there. Mijo, she said softly, sitting beside him. What's wrong? Dylan told her everything. The FBI, the drugs, the impossible choice. He expected shock, anger, maybe fear. Instead, Maria just nodded slowly. I knew, she said. What? About the Brotherhood. About where the money came from. She took his hand. I'm old, Dylan, not stupid. Nobody gives away that much money unless they're making it in ways the government doesn't like. Then why did you let me accept it? Maria looked at Emma, her tiny granddaughter fighting for every breath. Because my granddaughter was dying. Because I'd already lost my daughter and son-in-law. Because when someone offers you a miracle, you don't ask too many questions about where it came from. But it's drug money, Grandma. People probably died to make that money. Yes, Maria agreed. And people will die whether the Brotherhood exists or not. Addiction doesn't go away because you arrest the dealers. It just gets more dangerous, more desperate. She squeezed his hand. You want me to tell you what to do? I can't. This choice is yours. But I will tell you this. Those men, they didn't have to help us. They chose to. They saw a family in pain and they acted. That means something. Even if they're criminals. Me, Joe, I've lived long enough to know that good and evil aren't as simple as the law makes them seem. Good people do bad things. Bad people do good things. What matters is what you can live with. Dylan sat with those words as the sun rose over Riverside. At 8 a.m., Agent Brennan called. Have you made your decision? I need more time. No more time. We move today. Are you with us or not? Dylan looked at Emma, then at his grandmother. He thought about the Iron Brotherhood, about their complicated morality, about the good they did with money earned from harm. I'm not wearing a wire, Dylan said. Brennan was quiet for a moment. You understand what you're doing? You're protecting criminals. I'm protecting my family. Both families. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Dylan hung up. At the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse, an emergency meeting was underway. Preacher stood before the assembled members, his face grave. The FBI's moving today, he announced. We have maybe 2 hours before they execute warrants. Every member with outstanding warrants needs to disappear. Everyone else, clean your houses, your bikes, anywhere they might find evidence. What about the kid? Chains asked. Can we trust him? Before Preacher could answer, Dylan walked through the door. 42 bikers tensed, hands moving toward weapons that weren't quite visible. Dylan raised his hands. I told the FBI no, he said simply. I'm not helping them. The tension didn't quite leave the room, but it shifted. Why should we believe you? Someone asked. Dylan pulled out his phone, showed them his recent call log with Agent Brennan. Because I could have warned you earlier, but didn't. Because you trusted me enough to tell me the truth. Because Emma's still in that hospital, and you're still paying for her treatment, and that means something. Preacher studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, you're with us, you ride with us. That's how this works. Actually, Dylan said, I had a different idea. He walked to the center of the room. The FBI's coming for you because you're an organization. Because you have structure, hierarchy, territory. What if that structure disappeared? Marcus frowned. You want us to dissolve the club? I want you to evolve it. The FBI can't arrest you for being a motorcycle club. They can only arrest you for being a criminal enterprise. So stop being an enterprise. Become a charity. Chains laughed. That's crazy. Is it? Dylan pulled out his phone, showed them research he'd done during the night. Look at this. The Hells Angels have legal chapters that run toy drives and charity events. The Outlaws do food banks. You're already doing charity work, you're just funding it illegally. What if you made it legal? And where would we get the money? Someone asked. Donations, fundraisers, legitimate business ventures. You guys have skills. Wrench can fix anything mechanical. Marcus does custom bike work. Chains knows construction. You could run legitimate businesses and use the profits for charity. Preacher was listening intently now. We'd make a fraction of what we make now. True. But you wouldn't be looking at 20 years in federal prison. Smoke stepped forward. He's got a point. We started dealing because we needed money to help people. But maybe there's another way. The FBI's not going to just drop their investigation, Chains pointed out. No, Dylan agreed. But if they show up and find a legitimate charity organization instead of a criminal enterprise, what can they really charge you with? Past crimes are hard to prove without current evidence. If you clean up now, go legit, they've got nothing. The room erupted in debate. Some thought Dylan was naive. Others thought he might be onto something. The argument raged for an hour, voices raised, old loyalties tested. Finally, Preacher raised his hand for silence. There's something else we need to consider, he said. Our patches, the Iron Brotherhood colors. If we go legit, if we become a charity, do we still have the right to wear them? The room went silent. The patches, the colors, they represented everything the Brotherhood stood for. Earned through blood and loyalty, they were symbols of a life outside society's rules. In traditional MC culture, Preacher continued, "You burn your patches when you leave the life. When you can't live up to what they represent anymore." "We're not leaving the life," Chains protested. "We're just changing how we operate." "Are we?" Preacher challenged. "Because the life is about living outside the law. It's about being outlaws. If we go legit, if we start following society's rules, are we still bikers? Or are we just guys who ride motorcycles?" Marcus stood. "I wear this patch because it means something. It means I'm part of a brotherhood that takes care of its own. It means I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect my family. Going legit doesn't change that. But it does change what we're willing to do," Smoke said quietly. "If we're not willing to break the law anymore, if we're playing by their rules, then yeah, maybe we need to ask if we deserve to wear these patches." The debate continued through the morning. Some argued that the patches were about brotherhood, not criminality. Others insisted that the outlaw life was fundamental to motorcycle culture, that going legitimate was a betrayal of everything they stood for. At noon, Preacher called for a vote. All in favor of dissolving the Iron Brotherhood as a criminal enterprise and reforming as a legitimate charity organization, raise your hand. Hands went up slowly. Marcus, Smoke, Wrench. One by one, members voted for change. When the count was done, 37 members had voted yes. 5 had voted no. "Motion passes," Preacher announced. "The Iron Brotherhood, as we've known it, ends today." He looked at the 5 members who'd voted no. "You're free to leave. Start your own club, keep the life going. No hard feelings." The 5 men looked at each other, then at the brotherhood they'd built together. One by one, they nodded and walked out. That left 37 members and one decision. Preacher pulled a metal trash can into the center of the room. Traditional MC law says when you leave the life, you burn your patches. So here's the question. Are we leaving the life? Chain stood first. He looked at his vest, at the patches he'd earned over 15 years. "This patch means I'm part of something bigger than myself. It means I protect those who can't protect themselves. Going legit doesn't change that." He pulled out a lighter, held it to his patch. "But the old Iron Brotherhood is dead. Time for something new." The patch caught fire. Chains dropped it into the trash can. One by one, the other members followed. Marcus, Smoke, Wrench, each man burning the symbol of his old life, watching it turn to ash. When everyone else had burned their patches, only Preacher remained. He looked at Dylan. "You know what you started here, kid? You came to us looking for help. We helped you because that's what outlaws do. But you showed us something else. You showed us that sometimes the bravest thing isn't breaking the rules. It's changing them." He removed his president's patch, the one he'd worn for 20 years, and held it over the flames. "The Iron Brotherhood is dead," he said. "Long live the Iron Hearts." The patch burned. Part 8. The Transformation. The FBI raid happened at 2 p.m. 15 federal agents in tactical gear stormed the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse, guns drawn, warrants ready. They expected to find drugs, weapons, evidence of a criminal enterprise. Instead, they found 37 men in plain clothes filling out nonprofit paperwork. Agent Brennan stood in the doorway, looking at filing cabinets full of charity applications, tax forms, and business licenses. No drugs, no weapons, no evidence of criminal activity. "Where's your president?" he demanded. Preacher looked up from a stack of forms. "We don't have a president anymore. We have a chairman. Can I help you with something?" Brennan held up the search warrant. "We have reason to believe this location is being used for illegal activities. Feel free to look around," Preacher said calmly. "But all you'll find is paperwork for the Iron Hearts Community Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit specializing in medical assistance for families in crisis." The agents searched for 6 hours. They tore the place apart, looking for hidden compartments, secret stashes, anything that would justify their investigation. They found nothing. Because there was nothing to find. The Brotherhood had moved fast. Every ounce of product had been destroyed. Every piece of evidence had been eliminated. The organization that had existed 24 hours ago was gone, replaced by something that looked suspiciously legitimate. Brennan cornered Dylan in the parking lot as the agents were loading up. "You warned them," he accused. "I told them I wasn't going to help you," Dylan corrected. "That's not the same thing. You're protecting criminals. I'm protecting people who helped my family when nobody else would. If that makes me a criminal too, then I guess I'll have to live with that." Brennan studied him. You have no idea what you've done. Those men aren't reformed. They're just hiding. Maybe, Dylan said. Or maybe people can change. Maybe they already have. The agent shook his head and walked away. The transformation of the Iron Brotherhood into the Iron Hearts took 3 months. The change wasn't easy. Members who'd spent their whole lives operating outside the law had to learn to work within it. They had to get business licenses, pay taxes, deal with bureaucracy and red tape that drove them crazy. But they persisted. Wrench opened a motorcycle repair shop, using his mechanical skills to fix bikes for cheap. The profits went to the foundation. Marcus started a custom painting business, creating artistic designs on motorcycles and cars. More money for the foundation. Chains launched a construction company, hiring other former bikers and ex-cons who couldn't get work elsewhere. Living wages for workers, and the profits funded charity work. Within 6 months, the Iron Hearts Community Foundation was operating entirely on legitimate income. They'd raised over $500,000 through their businesses, charity rides, and community events. Emma's treatment was fully funded. The experimental CAR-T therapy worked better than anyone had hoped. Her T-cells, reprogrammed to attack the disease, were winning the war inside her body. Dr. Chun called it a miracle. Dylan just called it hope. But the foundation wasn't just about Emma anymore. Word spread about what the Iron Hearts were doing. Other families in crisis started reaching out. A single mother whose son needed a kidney transplant but couldn't afford anti-rejection medication. The Iron Hearts paid for it. A veteran with PTSD who couldn't afford the treatment that might save his life. The Iron Hearts covered the costs. A homeless teenager kicked out by his family for being gay, living on the streets, slowly dying. The Iron Hearts gave him a place to stay and paid for his education. One by one, they saved lives with money they'd earned honestly. The community's perception began to shift. The bikers who'd once been feared and avoided were now recognized and respected. People waved when they rode by. Local businesses donated to their causes. Even the police department, once hostile, started working with them on community outreach. On the 1-year anniversary of Dylan's spray painting those motorcycles, the Iron Hearts held a charity ride. Over 200 bikers participated, riding through Riverside with banners that read, "Riding for Hope." Iron Hearts Community Foundation. Emma rode on the back of Smoke's bike, her arms wrapped around his waist, her laughter carrying over the rumble of engines. She was in remission, her disease beaten back by the treatment the Brotherhood had funded. She had color in her cheeks, strength in her body, and a future that stretched out before her like an open road. Dylan rode beside them on his own bike, a gift from the foundation for his 18th birthday. He'd earned his motorcycle license, learned to ride, and been voted onto the foundation's board of directors. The spray paint thank yous were still visible on some of the older bikes, preserved now as a reminder of where they'd started. Some members had even gotten them professionally outlined and sealed, turning vandalism into art. At the end of the ride, they gathered in a park where a crowd of over 1,000 people waited. Families who'd been helped by the foundation, community members who'd donated, press covering the event. Preacher stood at a microphone, looking out at the sea of faces. "A year ago," he began, "a scared kid spray-painted thank you on our motorcycles. We were angry. We were ready to find him and make him pay for disrespecting our property." He smiled. Instead, that kid showed us what real courage looks like. He showed us that sometimes the hardest thing to do is ask for help. And he showed us that the best way to honor the help you've received is to pass it on. The crowd applauded. "The Iron Brotherhood is dead," Preacher continued. "We burned those patches because they represented a life we couldn't live anymore. A life that helped people, yes, but also hurt them. We had to choose. Keep doing good in bad ways, or find a way to do good that we could be proud of." He gestured to the assembled bikers. These men and women chose the harder path. They chose to earn their redemption the honest way. And together, we've saved over 50 lives this year. We've given hope to families who had none. We've proven that change is possible, even for people society has written off as beyond saving. Dylan stepped up to the microphone. "I spray-painted those bikes because I didn't know how else to say thank you for saving my sister's life. What I didn't know was that by doing that, I'd help save all of you too." He looked at the former Brotherhood members. "You saved Emma, but she saved you right back. That's how this works. We save each other." The crowd erupted in applause. Emma walked up, still small for her age, but vibrant with life. She took the microphone with both hands. I don't remember a lot about being sick, she said, her voice clear and strong. But I remember being scared all the time. Scared I was going to die. Scared my brother and grandma would give up. Scared that hope was just a word people said when they didn't want to tell you the truth. She looked at the Iron Hearts. You gave us real hope. Not the fake kind. The kind that comes with action and sacrifice and people showing up when they don't have to. Her eyes found Smoke. Mr. Smoke, you told my brother that saving your life made us family. You were wrong. Smoke's face fell. We were already family, Emma continued. We just didn't know it yet. All of us. Everyone who's helped someone. Everyone who's been helped. We're all family. And family takes care of family. The applause was deafening now. Part 9, the climax. But not everyone was celebrating the Iron Heart's transformation. In a federal building 3 miles away, Agent Brennan sat in his superior's office, his face flushed with frustration. They're still criminals, he insisted. This whole charity thing is a front. They're just better at hiding it now. His boss, Deputy Director Catherine Walsh, studied the file in front of her. Tom, we've been watching them for a year. They're clean. Their businesses are legitimate. Their charity work is real. At some point, you have to accept that people can change. They're laughing at us, Brennan said. They knew we were coming. They cleaned house. And now they're playing heroes while we look like idiots for investigating a charity. Or, Walsh suggested, they actually reformed. Which, if you think about it, is the best possible outcome. We didn't put them in prison, but we got them out of the drug trade. That's a win. It's not a win, Brennan argued. It's a loss. And I'm not letting them get away with it. He'd become obsessed with the Iron Hearts, convinced that their reformation was an elaborate deception. He spent his personal time investigating their finances, following their members, looking for any crack in the facade. And 3 months after the charity ride, he found something. It was a single transaction buried deep in the foundation's financial records. $50,000, deposited from an offshore account that couldn't be traced. The kind of account typically used for money laundering. Brennan presented his findings to Walsh with barely contained triumph. See? Dirty money. They're still taking drug profits and laundering them through the charity. Walsh examined the evidence. It's one transaction. Could be a legitimate overseas donation. From an account in the Cayman Islands? Come on. Even if it's not, one transaction doesn't prove ongoing criminal activity. It proves one mistake at most. It's enough for a warrant, Brennan insisted. Walsh sighed. Tom, you need to let this go. The Iron Hearts are doing good work. They're helping people. Even if some of their early funding came from questionable sources, they've been clean for over a year. I'm not letting them get away with this. Walsh leaned back in her chair. Fine, get your warrant. But if you raid that charity and find nothing, if you embarrass the Bureau again, you're done. Understood. Understood. Brennan left with renewed purpose. He'd bring down the Iron Hearts, prove they were still criminals, and finally get justice for all the lives they'd ruined over the years. He had no idea what he was about to unleash. The raid happened during the Iron Hearts monthly board meeting. Brennan arrived with 30 agents, armed with a warrant and the certainty that this time he'd find evidence of ongoing criminal activity. Preacher met him at the door of their new community center, a renovated warehouse they'd purchased to house their operations. Agent Brennan, Preacher said calmly, we've been expecting you. I'll bet you have. Step aside. The agents flooded the building, searching every room, every file cabinet, every computer. They seized documents, hard drives, financial records. They interrogated staff members, volunteers, board members. Dylan watched from across the street, his stomach churning with anxiety. He'd worked so hard to help the Iron Hearts go legitimate. If Brennan found something, if there was still dirty money in their operation, everything they'd built would collapse. Hours passed. The sun set. Agents came and went, carrying boxes of evidence. Finally, Brennan emerged, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. Nothing, he said to his second-in-command. We found nothing. What about that offshore transaction? It was a legitimate donation from a European charity that heard about their work. Everything checks out. The second-in-command nodded. So we're done here? Brennan looked at the building, at Preacher standing in the doorway with that knowing smile, at Dylan watching from across the street. No, Brennan said. We're not done. He walked over to Dylan. You think you're clever? Brennan said. You think you saved these men? All you did was teach them how to hide better. Or, Dylan replied, I showed them a better way to help people. They're criminals. They were criminals. People change. No, Brennan said. They don't. Not really. They just get better at pretending. He leaned in close. I'm going to prove it. And when I do, when this whole charity collapses and their true nature is revealed, I'm coming for you too. You're an accessory to everything they've done. Dylan met his gaze without flinching. Then you better hope you find something. Because if you don't, all you're doing is harassing a charity that helps sick kids. Brennan's jaw clenched. He turned and walked away, leaving Dylan standing in the darkening street. Inside the community center, Preacher gathered the Iron Hearts. Brennan's not going to stop, he said. He's made this personal. As long as we exist, he's going to keep coming after us. So what do? Marcus asked. We keep doing what we're doing. We stay clean, we help people, and we prove every single day that we're not what he thinks we are. Smoke spoke up. What if that's not enough? What if he finds something, plants something? We've all seen how the feds operate. Then we fight, Preacher said. We fight in court, in the media, in the community. We let people see who we really are now, not who we used to be. But fighting Agent Brennan would prove harder than any of them imagined. He was relentless, auditing every transaction, investigating every donation, following every member. He showed up at their charity events, questioning donors, trying to find any hint of impropriety. The community rallied around the Iron Hearts. People who'd been helped by the foundation spoke out. Families whose lives had been saved testified to the good the organization did. Local businesses defended them. Even some police officers, who'd seen the positive impact the Iron Hearts had on the community, pushed back against Brennan's investigation. But Brennan kept digging. And 3 months later, he found what he was looking for. It wasn't evidence of ongoing criminal activity. It was something worse. He found the truth about where the Iron Brotherhood's original money had come from. The drug deals, the lives destroyed, the families torn apart by addiction to the products they'd sold. He compiled victim statements, medical records, death certificates. And he went to the media. Local charity built on drug money. The headlines read, Iron Hearts Foundation's dark past revealed. The story spread fast. News outlets picked it up nationally. The foundation that had been celebrated as a model of redemption was suddenly under intense scrutiny. Donations dried up. Business partners pulled out. Families who'd been helped by the foundation faced harassment and judgment. And Emma Martinez's treatment funding was suddenly in jeopardy. Part 10, Resolution and Epilogue. The crisis meeting happened in the community center's main room, now empty of the furniture that had been seized during the latest raid. 37 Iron Hearts members sat in a circle, their faces drawn with exhaustion and stress. We're broke, Wrench announced, reading from a financial statement. The negative publicity killed our donations. Half our business contracts were canceled. We have maybe 2 months of operating funds left. What about Emma's treatment? Dylan asked, his voice tight with fear. That's the problem, Marcus said. Her next round is due in 3 weeks. It costs $80,000. We don't have it. Dylan felt his world collapsing. After everything they'd done, everything they'd sacrificed, Emma was going to lose her treatment because of their past. This is my fault, Preacher said quietly. I should have known that you can't outrun your history. We thought we could change, become something better, but the truth is we'll always be what we were. Drug dealers, criminals, men who hurt people. No, Dylan said, standing up. That's not true. You were those things. But you're not anymore. You changed. You proved it every single day for over a year. It doesn't matter what we prove, Chain said bitterly. Brennan won. He destroyed us without having to prove we're still criminals. He just reminded everyone what we used to be. Dylan looked around at these men who'd saved his sister, who'd transformed themselves, who'd helped dozens of other families. Men who were giving up because society wouldn't let them leave their past behind. You remember what you told me? Dylan said to Preacher. When I first spray-painted your bikes, you said the hardest thing isn't breaking the rules. It's changing them. Well, the rule right now says that people who've done bad things can never be trusted, even if they change. Even if they spend every day trying to do better. He pulled out his phone. So let's change that rule. Over the next week, Dylan did something the Iron Hearts had been too proud to do themselves. He told their story. Not the cleaned-up, media-friendly version, but the real story. The whole truth. He created a video that went viral within hours. In it, He talked about the Iron Brotherhood's past, the drug dealing, the lives destroyed, all the harm they'd caused. He didn't make excuses or try to minimize their crimes. But then he talked about their transformation, about men who'd recognized the damage they'd done and chosen to change, about burning their patches and building something new, about saving lives with legitimate money instead of destroying them with illegal drugs. They can't change what they were, Dylan said in the video. Nobody can change the past, but they can choose what they become. And for over a year, these men have chosen to be something better. They've helped 53 families. They've saved 17 lives. They've given hope to people who had none. He looked directly into the camera. My sister Emma is alive because of them. Yes, they paid for her treatment with drug money at first. But you know what? She's still alive. And in the past year, they've saved 16 other kids like her with money they earned honestly. 16 kids who would have died without them. So here's my question. Do we want to live in a world that punishes people forever for their mistakes? Or do we want to live in a world that gives people a chance to change, to grow, to become something better than what they were? The video ended with a simple call to action. The Iron Hearts Community Foundation needs help. Not because they're criminals, because they're trying not to be. Donate if you believe in second chances. Share if you believe people can change. The response was overwhelming. Within 24 hours, the video had been viewed over 1 million times. Donations poured in from across the country. Not everyone agreed with Dylan's message. Many people left angry comments, arguing that criminals didn't deserve second chances, that the harm the Iron Brotherhood had caused couldn't be undone by charity work. But others saw it differently. People who'd made mistakes in their own lives. People who believed in redemption. People who understood that change was possible, even for those who'd lost their way. Former addicts shared their own stories of recovery and transformation. Ex-convicts talked about the difficulty of rebuilding lives after prison. Social workers and therapists weighed in on the importance of giving people pathways out of criminal lifestyles. A national conversation emerged about redemption, second chances, and what we owe to people trying to change. Agent Brennan watched from his office, his face twisted with frustration. His investigation had been intended to destroy the Iron Hearts. Instead, it had made them famous. They were martyrs now, victims of a system that wouldn't let them leave their past behind. His superior called him in. "You're done," Deputy Director Walsh said. "You've wasted federal resources on a vendetta. The Iron Hearts are a legitimate charity doing good work. Your investigation is closed." But they were drug dealers. Were. Past tense. And unless you have evidence of current criminal activity, you will leave them alone. That's an order. Brennan left the building, his obsession crushed, his certainty shaken. 2 weeks later, Emma Martinez sat in a hospital room receiving her treatment. The Iron Hearts had raised over $600,000 from Dylan's video. Not only was Emma's treatment covered, but they'd fully funded operations for another year. More than that, they'd sparked a movement. Other former gang members reached out, asking how to transform their organizations. Ex-convicts sought advice on starting legitimate businesses. Community groups invited the Iron Hearts to speak about redemption and change. Preachers sat beside Emma's hospital bed, watching the drip that was saving her life. "You know," he said to Dylan, "when you spray-painted our bikes, I thought you were the stupidest, bravest kid I'd ever met. And now?" Dylan asked. "Now I think you're the smartest, bravest kid I've ever met. You didn't just save your sister. You saved all of us." "You saved yourselves," Dylan corrected. "I just helped people see it." Emma, her color better now, her breathing steady, spoke up. "Can I say something?" Everyone turned to her. "When I was really sick, when I thought I was going to die, I used to wonder what the point was. Like, why am I here? What am I supposed to do?" She looked at the Iron Hearts gathered around her bed. "I think maybe the point was this. All of it. You guys needed a reason to change. Dylan needed a reason to be brave. And I needed a reason to fight. We all saved each other." Smoke wiped his eyes. "Kid's got wisdom beyond her years. She gets that from her brother," Maria said, putting her arm around Dylan. 6 months later, the Iron Hearts Community Foundation was thriving. They'd opened 3 locations across Southern California, all operating on legitimate funds. Their charity work had expanded to include addiction treatment, job training for ex-convicts, and support for families in crisis. The original members still rode their motorcycles, but now they wore different patches. Simple ones that read, "Iron Hearts," with a symbol of a heart made of steel. No more claims of brotherhood, no more outlaw imagery. Just a commitment to helping people. Dylan graduated high school with honors and enrolled in college, planning to study social work. Emma was in full remission, her disease beaten, her future bright. She'd started a youth group at the community center, helping other kids dealing with illness. Agent Brennan retired from the FBI, his career never recovering from the Iron Hearts case. His last act was to write a letter to Preacher. "You were right," it read. "People can change. I just couldn't accept it because it meant admitting I was wrong. About you, about redemption, about second chances. I'm sorry. I hope you continue the good work." Preacher framed the letter and hung it in the community center as a reminder. Even the people most convinced of your guilt can eventually see the truth. On the 2-year anniversary of Dylan spray painting those motorcycles, the Iron Hearts held their largest charity event yet. Over 500 riders participated, raising money for medical research into rare diseases. The original spray-painted bikes were there too, carefully preserved. Dylan's crude silver letters had been incorporated into custom paint jobs, turning vandalism into art, gratitude into legacy. At the end of the ride, Dylan stood before the assembled crowd with Emma beside him. 2 years ago, he began, I spray-painted thank you on 42 motorcycles because I didn't know how else to express my gratitude. Those bikers could have destroyed me. Instead, they destroyed who they used to be. He gestured to the Iron Hearts. These men burned their patches. They gave up everything they'd built as the Iron Brotherhood. They chose to start over, to become something new, to earn redemption the hard way. And in doing so, they proved something important, that we're not defined by our worst moments. We're defined by what we do after them, by whether we choose to grow, to change, to become better. Emma took the microphone. My brother saved the Iron Brotherhood by spray painting their bikes. But really, they saved themselves. They made the choice to change. All Dylan did was give them a reason. She looked out at the crowd. We all need reasons sometimes. Reasons to hope, to fight, to believe we can be better than we are. The Iron Hearts gave me a reason to live. My brother gave them a reason to change. And now, together, we're giving other people reasons to hope. The applause was thunderous. As the sun set over Riverside, California, 37 former outlaws stood with the families they'd helped, the community they'd rebuilt, and the hope they'd created from the ashes of their old lives. They'd been drug dealers, criminals, men society had written off as beyond redemption. Now they were something else, something better. They were proof that change was possible, that second chances mattered, that gratitude could transform even the hardest hearts. And it all started with 2 words spray-painted on motorcycles in the middle of the night. Thank you.